or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, February 19th. Your readers today are
Pat Lamont
and Ruth Nowotniak. And our Western New York forecast. Mostly cloudy today, high of 40. Partly to mostly cloudy tonight with a little rain toward dawn, low of 36. Breezy tomorrow with rain and drizzle, high of 45. Saturday, colder with some sun, then turning cloudy, high of 34. And it looks like Sunday there'll be snow or flurries possible, a high of 33 and a low of 27. And watching the national news, there's awful weather in the west and in the middle of the country. The huge fires in Oklahoma are terrible. Nationally, the high was at McAllen, Texas, at 87 degrees, and the low is at St. Mary's, Montana, at minus 12. Our sunrise was at 7 this morning, and the sunset tonight is expected at 5:52. And we have no new snow at all of our ski areas, but they are certainly open, and the skiing is going on. And as Pat mentioned last week, the snow across the state, the to-date accumulation, Syracuse wins at 126 inches, followed by Rochester at 101, Jamestown at 91, and then we are fourth at 81. So it's good to keep that in mind when the snow derby across the nation puts Buffalo first at 81 inches. So it's nice to know that we are not first in New York State. And our front page article, Police Captain Suspended in Case of Cop's Wife's Death. It's written by Aaron Biesecker, who's a new staff reporter. A Buffalo police captain has been suspended in connection with the case of an officer accused of killing his wife on Valentine's Day, the department said Wednesday. The department withheld the female captain's name and assignment. When asked about reasons for the suspension, Interim Police Commissioner Craig Macy said at a news conference that the department has some information that leads them to believe there were some rules and regulations that might not have been followed. I'm not overly happy with the timeline and when other members were notified in the department of this situation, Macy said. School Resource Officer Lance Woods, 53, has been charged with second-degree murder for the slaying of Alexis Skolcias, 35, in a home on Buffalo Street in Sanborn. Authorities believe Alexis was killed Saturday morning, but Lewiston police didn't discover her body until early Sunday morning. The Buffalo Police Department is conducting an internal investigation into everything that went on Saturday and early Sunday, Macy said. A timeline released by the Buffalo Police Department pertaining to the case reveals that Woods was with his two children at the D District Police Station on Hurdle Avenue early Saturday evening. Woods' last work shift before the killing ended at 4 p.m. Friday. Macy said he didn't know why Woods had his children with him at the station. In addition to withholding the captain's name, Macy also would not say which district or unit of the police department the captain was assigned to. The name was being withheld because of a, quote, concern for due process. We also don't know the extent of any involvement and how it could possibly play into somebody else's investigation, Macy said. Lewiston police investigated the slaying, and the state attorney general's office is also investigating the case and is expected to handle Woods' criminal prosecution. The suspended police captain, according to the department, was told at 4:30 p.m. Saturday that Skolcias' mother was trying to get in touch with Woods and didn't have his phone number. About 10 minutes later, the captain told an E-District lieutenant to call Skolcias' mother and tell her Woods would have his wife call her mother in an hour. Less than an hour later, about 5:30 p.m., Skolcias' mother called the E-District police captain on Bailey Avenue and said she still hadn't heard from her daughter. At 7 p.m., Lewiston police called the E-District station house asking to speak with a supervisor, information that was relayed to the captain, the department said. The captain also spoke in person with Woods at the station at 7:52 p.m. Saturday. It was at that point that the captain called Lewiston Police in Woods' presence, Buffalo Police said. At 8:05 p.m., after a shift change in the D District station, Woods left the station with his children. Buffalo Police learned at 12:45 a.m. Sunday that Skolchilas had been killed and Woods was a person of interest, the interim commissioner had said. Woods was taken into custody about 3 a.m. Sunday in Cheektowaga. The timeline also revealed that Buffalo Police executed a search warrant to retrieve property from Woods' locker about 5:30 p.m. on Sunday at the police station used by school resource officers at the corner of Louisiana Street and South Park Avenue. Woods, who was suspended without pay as of Monday evening, remains held without bail. The captain was relieved of duty for the day at 3 p.m. Sunday. 5 hours later, the captain was suspended with pay pending an investigation by the Internal Affairs Division, police said. The Skolchilas family has started a GoFundMe to pay for funeral and memorial costs, as well as anticipated legal fees related to the couple's 2 children. Lewiston police were dispatched to Skolchilas' home about 5:14 p.m. Saturday, but didn't enter the home until after midnight, which was when Skolchilas' body was discovered. Lewiston Police Chief Michael Salata said Wednesday. The department released the timeline and answered questions about it under a mayoral directive for police transparency, Macy said at the news conference.
Zuckerberg testifies in social media addiction trial. Mark Zuckerberg and opposing lawyers dueled in a Los Angeles courtroom on Wednesday, where the Meta CEO answered questions about young people's use of Instagram, his congressional testimony, and internal advice he's received about being authentic and not robotic. Zuckerberg's testimony is part of an unprecedented social media trial that questions whether Meta's platforms deliberately addict and harm children. Attorneys representing the plaintiff and now 20-year-old woman, identified by the initials KGM, claim her early use of social media addicted her to the technology and exacerbated depression and suicidal thoughts. Meta Platforms and Google's YouTube are the 2 remaining defendants in the case, which TikTok and Snap have settled. Beginning his questioning, the plaintiff's attorney, Mark Lanier, laid out 3 options of what people can do regarding vulnerable people: help them, ignore them, or prey upon them and use them for your own ends. Zuckerberg said he agrees the last option is not what a reasonable company should do, saying, "I think a reasonable company should try to help the people that use its services." When he was asked about his compensation, Zuckerberg said he has pledged to give almost all of his money to charity, focusing on scientific research. Lanier asked him how much money he has pledged to victims impacted by social media, to which Zuckerberg replied, "I disagree with the characterization of your question." Lanier also asked Zuckerberg about what he characterized as extensive media training, including for testimonies like the one he was giving in court. Lanier pointed to an internal document about feedback on Zuckerberg's tone of voice on his own social media, imploring him to come off as authentic, direct, human, insightful, and real, and instructing him to not try hard, fake, robotic, corporate, or cheesy in his communication. Zuckerberg pushed back against the idea that he's been coached on how to respond to questions or present himself, saying those offering the advice were just giving feedback. Regarding his media appearances and public speaking, Zuckerberg said, "I think I'm actually well known to be sort of bad at this." The Meta CEO has long been mocked online for appearing robotic, and when he was younger, nervous when speaking publicly. In 2010, during an interview with renowned tech journalists Kara Swisher and Walt Mossberg, He was sweating so profusely that Swisher asked him if he wanted to take off the hoodie that was his uniform at the time. Lanier spent a considerable stretch of his limited time with Zuckerberg asking about the company's age verification process. "I don't see why this is so complicated," Zuckerberg said after a lengthy back and forth, reiterating that the company's policy restricts users under the age of 13 and that they work to detect users who have lied about their ages to bypass restrictions. Zuckerberg mostly stuck to his talking points, referencing his goal of building a platform that is valuable to users, and on multiple occasions saying he disagreed with Lanier's characterization of his questions or of Zuckerberg's own comments. Zuckerberg has testified in other trials and answered questions from Congress about youth safety on Meta's platforms, and he has apologized to families at that hearing whose lives had been upended by tragedies they believed were because of social media. This trial, though, marks the first time Zuckerberg will answer similar questions in front of a jury, and again, bereaved parents are expected to be in the limited courtroom seats available to the public. The case, along with 2 others, has been selected as a bellwether trial, meaning its outcome could impact how thousands of similar lawsuits against social media companies are likely to play out. A Meta spokesperson said the company strongly disagrees with the allegations in the lawsuit and said they are confident the evidence will show our long-standing commitment of supporting young people. One of Meta's attorneys, Paul Schmidt, said in his opening statement that the company is not disputing that KGM experienced mental health struggles, but rather disputing that Instagram played a substantial factor in those struggles. He pointed to medical records that showed a turbulent home life, and both he and an attorney representing YouTube argue she turned to their platforms as a coping mechanism or a means of escaping her mental health struggles. Zuckerberg's testimony comes a week after that of Adam Mosseri, the head of Meta's Instagram, who said in the courtroom that he disagrees with the idea that people can be clinically addicted to social media platforms. Mosseri maintained that Instagram works hard to protect young people using the service and said it's not good for the company over the long run to make decisions that profit for us but are poor for people's well-being. Much of Mosseri's questioning from the plaintiff's lawyer, Mark Lanier, centered on cosmetic filters on Instagram that changed people's appearance, a topic that Lanier is sure to revisit with Zuckerberg. He is also expected to face questions about Instagram's algorithm, the infinite nature of Meta's feeds, and other features the plaintiffs argue are designed to get users hooked. Meta is also facing a trial in New Mexico that began last week.
8 skiers dead and 1 still missing after avalanche. Crews found the bodies of 8 backcountry skiers and are searching for 1 more who remains missing after an avalanche in the mountains near Lake Tahoe, authorities said Wednesday, making it the deadliest U.S. avalanche in nearly half a century. 6 others from the same group of skiers were rescued Tuesday. They were on a guided 3-day trek in Northern California's Sierra Nevada as a monster winter storm pummeled the West Coast. You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is approximately 14 minutes past the hour, and we will go to our editorial piece, Not So Fast. Preservationists in Kenmore are asking the right questions. Is it really necessary to demolish a century-old church in order to build a Shake Shack in its place? The former Kenmore Presbyterian Church, built in 1926, is an imposing presence on its corner location, 2765 Delaware Avenue. It lacks the soaring verticality and prominent steeple of many traditional church structures, but it has its own striking architectural elements, including prominent Gothic-style arches and buttresses. It's quite large at 38,000 square feet, with a symmetrical rectangular footprint that would seem to lend itself to mixed-use redevelopment. That's not even to mention the 60-space parking lot that's conveniently adjacent. The loss of this structure would diminish its surroundings. It would also be a stupid waste of a handsome, eminently reusable historic building. A demolition permit requires Kenmore Village Board approval. Those leaders should give this matter careful consideration before allowing a Rochester-based development group led by Matthew J. Lester to toss this building into a landfill. As reported by the News' Stephen Watson, the church doesn't have historic landmark status. Few such structures in Kenmore do. But there are Kenmore residents, such as Melissa Foster, founder and president of the Kenmore Village Improvement Society, who wonder if a hasty demolition would lead to years of regret. Foster asks, "How do we keep things to cherish our past as well as embrace the future?" Adding, "These are very serious things that we need to make sure we know before a wrecking ball starts." The Lester Group bought the former church for $1.6 million in 2023. The intention is to tear down the existing building, which sits on a 1.21-acre lot, and then build a one-story Shake Shack and a two-story mixed-use building on the parcel's north side, which would have first-floor retail space and 10 upper-floor apartments. Village officials are concerned that the mixed-use building may not materialize once the Shake Shack is in place. They should be. The Rochester Group is not known for residential development and admitted through attorney Jeffrey Palumbo that it would need a partner to make that happen. For that matter, fast food fads are unreliable, with plenty of empty buildings to show for it. Some of these empty storefronts are in Kenmore, waiting for a Shake Shack to move in. Indeed, nothing prevents the chain from occupying the church building. It's only been empty for a few years. Unlike many long vacant church structures that have been neglected for decades, the Kenmore Presbyterian Church congregation actively used this building until 2022, when its shrinking members made it necessary to sell the large church and move to a smaller facility. Though roof repair is needed, it is not a dilapidated structure, as its current owners claim. And even if the building is in worse shape than when they bought it in 2023, whose fault is that? Kenmore doesn't have a large inventory of historic structures to spare. One of the few that's left sits across the street from the former church. It's a Richardsonian Romanesque mansion built in 1894 for Fred Eberhart, brother of entrepreneur Louis P.A. Eberhart, who is considered a founder of Kenmore, which he envisioned as a peaceful enclave for those who wish to escape the city. Since that time, Kenmore has gone through various development phases. As with many other suburbs, walkability is a big goal now. Adaptive reuse is one way to accomplish that. The former Kenmore Presbyterian needs a solid reuse plan. Kenmore officials should not give up on one materializing before they consign this impressive structure to the trash heap.
And from another voice. Most support the Save America Act. This is written by Joseph Burns, who is a partner in the law firm of Holtzman Vogel, PLLC, and a Republican election lawyer. As the country begins what will undoubtedly be another contentious midterm election year, Republicans in the House of Representatives have approved a common-sense election reform proposal that Americans from across the political spectrum can support. This proposal, the SAVE, Save America Act, implements pragmatic election safeguards that are, according to polls, already very popular with the American people. The Save America Act would require proof of citizenship, be provided when registering to vote. While non-citizens are prohibited from voting in federal elections, those registering to vote are not currently required to provide any documentary proof of citizenship. The bill allows any number of documents, everything from passports to birth certificates, to be provided to prove citizenship. Mandating that only citizens vote is hardly controversial. A number of states in recent years have successfully held referenda prohibiting non-citizen voting that were approved by voters. The Save America Act would also require voters to show a photo ID when voting in federal elections, as many states already require. A recent Pew Research Center survey found that 83% of Americans support voter ID laws. This includes 95% of Republicans, but it also includes a clear majority, 71%, of Democrats. Opponents of the Save America Act forget that Article 1, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution specifically grants Congress authority over the times, places, and manner of federal elections. In 1993, the Democratic-controlled Congress approved the National Voter Registration Act, which set national standards and requirements for states when registering voters. Almost a decade later, and with overwhelming bipartisan support, President George W. Bush signed into law the Help America Vote Act, which set standards for voting machines, mandated statewide voter registration databases, and established a new federal agency, the Election Assistance Commission, to oversee and provide guidance to state election administrators. Well-meaning Americans of all political persuasions want the next election and all future elections to be conducted competently and honestly. The U.S. Senate should now pass the Save America Act and move the country closer to achieving these goals. And now to our editorial cartoon. It's from Tom Steidlish of Creators Syndicate. It's one frame, and it's the little Wendy's girl in her little insignia, and she has great shock look on her face, and underneath is Wendy's. And the caption is, "Wendy's to close hundreds of U.S. restaurants after sales plunge." Another one going down. And now we will go to our first opinion piece from Caitlin Buss of the Detroit News. The Guthrie search shows what's possible. If there's any chance Nancy Guthrie's assailant will not be found, it won't be for lack of awareness. Her disappearance has mobilized extraordinary attention nationwide. It's heartbreaking to think the 84-year-old Arizona woman, the mother of Savannah Guthrie, co-host of NBC's Today Show, might still be held against her will in the Tucson area after being kidnapped nearly 2 weeks ago. The story and its developments have been broadcast widely ever since. Savannah Guthrie has been spreading the word about her mother's disappearance, including in a public video plea to her kidnappers, and attracting first-rate help. And she should. Anyone in her position would likely be doing the same thing for a loved one who vanished under troubling circumstances. But what if the same level of wall-to-wall media coverage, law enforcement efforts, and coordination with the FBI that has been given to Guthrie's disappearance were given to other missing people? The exhaustive coverage has laid bare the uncomfortable reality that not all missing people receive this level of attention, despite the seeming availability of on-demand law enforcement and broadcast services. As of last Wednesday, the attention around Guthrie's case has led to more than 4,000 calls coming into the tip line over 24 hours to the Arizona Sheriff's Department investigating the disappearance. Since February 1, when Guthrie was reported missing, it has received nearly 18,000 calls altogether. The FBI is offering $50,000 for information leading to her recovery. That is a remarkable response, and hopefully it will work. But there are thousands of missing people throughout the United States whose family members will never get that same level of help or awareness. In 2024, there were 93,447 active missing persons records in the U.S., 37% under the age of 21. In Michigan, there are currently 2,646 missing persons, according to the Michigan State Police. Behind those numbers are Michigan families living in suspended time, parents, brothers, and sisters who can scan headlines hoping their case will resurface. Their disappearance rarely draw helicopters or national broadcast. Savannah Guthrie is a nationally known figure, and kidnapping is a fear Americans have been fixated on much in the last decade, making it an intriguing, high-profile case. But at this point, the contrast with lesser-known cases is impossible to ignore, even though it's understandable. Consider the law enforcement response, which has heavily included FBI Director Kash Patel. It is common for state and local investigators to request federal help, but the scale of urgency and response seems far greater than a standard kidnapping case. All resources have been dedicated to this investigation, Patel said on Fox News. More than 100 law enforcement personnel from multiple agencies have been involved in the investigation and search efforts around the clock, according to Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos. The prayer is that Guthrie is found alive. If this is what justice looks like when resources are relatively unlimited, the real question is why we accept less for everyone else.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time is approximately 27 minutes past the hour, and we will move on to our second editorial piece, which is written by Paul Rees, who's from the Los Angeles Times. ICE has escalated to illegal home invasions. This will end poorly. Chung Lee Theo, known as Scott, 56, was taking a Sunday afternoon nap recently at his home in St. Paul, Minnesota, when federal immigration agents broke down his front door. A group of masked armed men burst in and took him outdoors in sub-freezing temperatures, wearing only Crocs, his underwear, and a blanket. After being questioned by agents for nearly an hour, he was returned to his residence without any explanation or apology. Theo is a naturalized U.S. citizen with no criminal record. While searches like these used to require a judicial warrant, a recently leaked Immigration and Customs Enforcement memo from May instructs agents to forcibly enter homes with only an administrative warrant. This policy flies in the face of the Constitution, legal precedent, and Homeland Security's own guidelines. It should concern all Americans who value their privacy and civil liberties. The warrants that most of us think of, the come back with a warrant kind familiar from legal dramas, is a judicial warrant different from administrative. Judicial warrants are issued by judges when they are presented with probable cause and allow law enforcement officers to enter and search a person's residence. In contrast, administrative warrants are issued by staff in the executive branch and can be used to arrest someone, including someone suspected of being in the U.S. without legal status. But until May, they were understood to not allow law enforcement officers to enter a suspect's home. ICE is now blurring the distinction between these two types of warrants, telling agents to barge into people's residences based solely on agency authority. This violates the Fourth Amendment, which protects people, including non-citizens, from unreasonable searches and seizures in their homes. It ignores rulings from the Supreme Court, which has consistently held that the Fourth Amendment prohibits a government's non-consensual entry into a person's home without a judicial warrant. As the High Court articulated in 1980, quote, "The physical entry of the home is a chief evil against which the wording of the Fourth Amendment is directed," unquote. ICE's new policy, which came to light only because of two whistleblowers, contradicts existing agency guidance. A 2025 Homeland Security Training Manual says that entering homes without a judicial warrant is prohibited, noting that doing so would be a violation of the Fourth Amendment. In 2023, ICE Operations Handbook similarly states that an administrative warrant is insufficient grounds for entering a home, though of course residents might gain an agent entry voluntarily, especially if they are not aware of their right to deny access to private spaces. The discussion about administrative and judicial warrants is not an abstract debate. It relates to an abuse of power that is happening now. ICE agents have been forcibly entering homes without proper warrants since at least last summer. Besides the case of Theo, ICE has raided homes in South Dakota, Illinois, Texas, Indiana, and California without the necessary legal authorization. In several cases, ICE entered the wrong home. This is one reason judicial warrants have always been required. They have criteria intended to minimize such mistakes. The agency's unilateral expansion of government power is dangerous, and not only for immigrant families. If an agency is allowed to give itself the right to enter people's homes, the consequences could go far beyond immigration enforcement. The IRS could authorize its agents to force their way into a person's home without their consent and seize computers, documents, and phones. Social service agencies could authorize caseworkers to forcibly enter a home and check up on people's children. Agents from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms could enter a residence without any court authority to verify compliance with gun regulations. Tricia McLaughlin, a spokesperson for Homeland Security, has defended the use of administrative warrants to arrest undocumented immigrants. The officers issuing these administrative warrants also have found probable cause, she said. For decades, the Supreme Court and Congress have recognized the propriety of administrative warrants in cases of immigration enforcement. Yet her explanation is misleading because it sidesteps the question of using an administrative warrant to invade someone's home. Consider the secretive manner in which ICE has rolled out this new policy. The memo was shown only to select agency officials who were allowed to review it but not take notes on it. There were few physical copies of the memo distributed. Instead, instructors are verbally training new agent hires on the policy. It seems like ICE does not want a paper trail surrounding this policy, probably because it runs afoul of the law. Lately, immigration agents have shocked the country with fatal shootings of U.S. citizens, while a Fox News poll finds that 59% of voters say that ICE is too aggressive. So this is no time to hand agents more unchecked power. Instead, ICE must be reined in. That can start with Democratic lawmakers holding to their demand that agents stop using administrative warrants for home raids as a condition of fully funding Homeland Security in the weeks ahead. ICE's new warrant policy should not be allowed to stand. It threatens people in the sanctity of their own homes and puts Americans at risk of intrusive government overreach.
And our final opinion comes from Ilana Rabinowitz of the Los Angeles Times. The lost art of prank calling strangers in simpler times. Do you remember what it was like to go be bored? Like really bored? As a Gen Xer, I didn't grow up scrolling social media or playing endless hours of Minecraft. To keep me busy, instead, I spent a fair amount of my free time after school crafting the perfect crank call. Armed with an oversized white or yellow pages, a rotary phone, and a close friend or two, we'd go name to name, business to business, raining terror on neighbors. In retrospect, it was time well spent. Well, maybe. Some shenanigans may have gone too far. Friends ordered a few too many pizzas to a stranger's house, or imposed endless verbal harassment on an overstressed father. It was a simpler time. The endless hours of making or receiving prank calls in those pre-internet days became my coming-of-age story. This way to pass the time actually dates back to the 1880s, just a few years after the phone was invented, and started with an undertaker, of all people, getting called to fetch the dead body of a not-so-dead woman. Around the same time, Bell Telephone hired teenage boys to work as switchboard operators, an obvious recipe for disaster. Sure enough, the boys began to connect and disconnect people's calls simply for their own amusement. It seems unimaginable now to get together with a friend and spend an afternoon calling people just to put on funny voices or shout one-liners and hang up. I realize the absurdity of it all, but I imagine these precious moments were not based on malice. It was just a way to entertain ourselves until dinner. Prank calls forced you to learn how to improvise. While one friend may have had an idea of a canned joke or a line they wanted to try, in the end, you had to ad-lib what was said depending on who answered, and you had to be prepared for anything. Although most of the time it was a corny joke, "Is your refrigerator running?" is a classic. Once I reached puberty, the majority of our prank calls were spent dialing up the boys we liked or the girls we didn't. I was careful not to call too often, but the idea that I could maybe, just maybe, hear the breath of my teenage obsession filled me with glee. Unfortunately, this was rarely the case. Most times their parents would answer and I would hang up loudly and quickly. Another genre altogether was the crank call, a more nefarious and in some ways illegal form of mayhem me and my besties concocted. Like anything, our pranks revolved around the zeitgeist of time. What started with the desperate call to the town undertaker evolved into teens spending hours dialing 867-5309 and asking for Jenny in accordance with the popular 80s song, an unfortunate coincidence for anyone who had the number. Today, our handheld devices cannot tell us the names of just about anyone calling or let us know if scam likely is on the other end. People block unwanted numbers, and so no one under 30 has heard of the white pages. Pranks have turned into memes and other visual online jokes that rarely involve active communication. No Grubhub driver is showing up with a dozen pizzas that aren't paid for. The jig is up, and maybe that's okay. Teenagers have new ways to socialize now. But man, I sure do miss the innocence of the prank calls and the friends I made while we inundated the town with our juvenile assaults. The way my voice would change when someone answered, and the endless laughter. That all stopped once the dreaded Star 69 was invented, and with just 3 buttons, people, you could discover who was on the other end of the line. Armed with cell phones and endless devices now, we can instantly distract or entertain ourselves for hours on end. And in some ways, that's sad. Those moments of little to do forced us latchkey kids to express ourselves, even if we were shy. I'd go so far as to say for many professional entertainers, it was an informal first audition, learning how to come up with a retort on the spot. It wasn't about getting punked or embarrassing someone, not entirely at least, but about being with your friends, killing time, and doing something that got your adrenaline pumping, if only for a few seconds. The whole point was a bunch of kids setting out on a verbal expedition to use the telephone as a megaphone to have our voices heard. And that we did, better than starting a podcast.
And we'll go to our health article. Health data ebbs. RFK Jr. pledged more transparency, but that hasn't been the case. A year ago, U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said he wanted to rebuild trust in federal health agencies and vowed to employ radical transparency to do it. But many types of health information that steadily flowed from the government for years or decades was delayed, deleted, and in some cases stopped. The collection and sharing of information was hurt by sweeping layoffs at federal agencies and the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. Officials took down health agency websites to comply with an executive order from President Donald Trump, causing outside researchers to archive federal health data sets and leading to a lawsuit that ended with a judge ordering the website's restoration. Ariel Bexia, a researcher at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, said changes in the flow of federal health information made her angry. We pay taxes to hopefully have good, inclusive public health practices and data, she said, who focuses on the health of the LGBTQ youth. The past year, it felt like every single day something that I and my colleagues use daily in our work has just been taken away by federal officials. Asked about now unavailable data and information, a spokesman for Kennedy said the premise of the Associated Press's inquiry was flawed and relied on selective and inaccurate characterizations. Secretary Kennedy is leading the most transparent HHS in history with unprecedented disclosure and openness aimed at restoring public trust in federal health agencies, said the spokesman Andrew Nixon. He pointed to an HHS webpage on the agency's transparency efforts, which includes a list of canceled government contracts and the repackaging of previously available information, including a U.S. Food and Drug Administration chemical contaminants transparency tool. Here are some examples of how less information is coming out of federal public health agencies than in past administrations. Abortion. The Project 2025 blueprint that was influential to the Trump administration called for the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention to enhance its data collection of U.S. abortions, but the agency failed to post its annual abortion surveillance report in November. Nixon said it will come out this spring. HHS officials blamed the delay on the CDC's former chief medical officer, Dr. Deborah Horay, saying she directed staff to return state-submitted abortion data rather than analyze it. Horay, who resigned months before the report was slated to come out, said that claim was false. She says the report was derailed because HHS cutbacks to funding and staff. Overdoses. Fighting the nation's overdose crisis was long a priority for both Republicans and Democrats, and the federal government continued to collect and report on death certificate-based information on drug deaths. However, the Trump administration curtailed other kinds of overdose work, including shutting down the Drug Abuse Warning Network, which tracked emergency department visits and early alert about drug use trends. It was discontinued as part of a broader effort to align policy activities with agency and administration priorities, officials posted. Nixon said past Dawn data will remain available. Still, some experts say that's not enough, and recently likened Dawn's termination and other recent changes to spreading cracks in a windshield that will make it harder to see what's ahead. Smoking. Smoking was long known as the nation's leading preventable cause of death. The federal government for decades not only monitored what percentage of people use cigarettes and other tobacco products, but also ran successful public education campaigns like the FDA's Real Cost and the CDC's Tips from Former Smokers. Those campaigns were ended last year, though Nixon said the FDA campaign will return. Meanwhile, layoffs to CDC staff who worked on smoking meant an important survey on youth smoking and vaping, normally out of the fall, was never released. Those layoffs also stopped work on a report on smoking for the Office of the U.S. Surgeon General.
Food safety. For 3 decades, federal health officials tracked food poisoning infections caused by 8 germs. In July, the Trump administration scaled back required reporting to just 2 pathogens monitored by the Foodborne Diseases Active Surveillance Network, known as FoodNet. Under the change, health departments in 10 states that participate in the joint state and federal program only monitor infections caused by Salmonella and Shiga toxin-producing E. coli. Tracking is optional for infections caused by Campylobacter, Cyclospora, Listeria, Shigella, Vibrio, and Yersinia. CDC officials said the change would allow the agency to steward resources effectively. Food safety experts said the move undercuts the nation's ability to accurately monitor risks in U.S. food supply. LGBTQ plus issues. Before Kennedy was confirmed, President Donald Trump signed executive orders to roll back protections for transgender people and terminate diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. That caused the CDC to remove from its website a range of information about HIV and transgender people. The government also stopped collecting and reporting crucial survey findings on transgender students, data that showed higher rates of depression, drug use, bullying, and other problems. That data is used to help fund and focus suicide prevention programs and other efforts. This is all happening as the federal and some state governments try to discourage gender-affirming care, ban transgender youth from sports, and dictate which bathrooms they can use. Without the data, we can't systematically show the harm that's being done by these policies. Nixon said the data collection and reporting now aligns with agency priorities. Conflicts of interest. Before he was health secretary, Kennedy was a leading voice in the anti-vaccine movement and repeatedly accused federal health advisors of conflicts of interest that aligned them with vaccine makers. In June, he dismissed the entire advisory committee on immunization practices and named his own replacements. A federal official said the government would release ethics forms for the new members, but it didn't. Meanwhile, a CDC website that compiles disclosures by past and current ACIP members has more than 200 entries of former panel members, but information on only one Kennedy appointee. Among those missing from the list are Martin Kulldorff, the initial chair of Kennedy's reconstituted committee, who was paid to be an expert witness in legal cases against the vaccine maker Merck. Another current member is Dr. Robert Malone, who also was paid as an expert witness in vaccine litigation.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Bogdan Joan M., Gervasi Richard N., Klein Janice Nee Landis, Loricella Salvatore P., nicknamed Sam, Patillo Buckner Elizabeth, Reed Martin D., Sergev Anthony L., Weber Kathleen Annette. Also nationally, Doug Moe, an ABA original who gained fame over a rumpled, irreverent, and sometimes R-rated decade as coach of the Denver Nuggets in the 1980s, died Tuesday. He was 87. The Nuggets, in a social media post, called Moe a one-of-a-kind leader and person who spearheaded one of the most successful and exciting decades in Nuggets history. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555.
And now let us see what the stars are predicting for us today. Happy birthday for Thursday, February 19th, 2026. You are sensitive, individualistic, and perceptive. You want to contribute to the greater good. This year, it's time to create solid foundations in your life, both externally and internally. Remember, each day has a star designation. 5 stars, you're going to have a dynamic day. 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, 1 difficult. Aries, a 3-star day. As this day wears on, it gets better and you become more powerful. Don't be discouraged initially if you feel shot down, criticized, or diminished. Tonight, you win. Taurus, a 3-star day. 2 separate influences are at play today. In one way, this is a popular time for you, and you'll enjoy hanging out with younger creative people. However, a different influence can make you want to hide and be low-key. Tonight, enjoy privacy. Gemini, I'm sorry. A 3-star day. An older friend might create confusion for you today. Perhaps you don't know how to take what they're saying. Tonight, be friendly. Cancer, a 3-star day. Tread carefully today because your conversation with bosses, parents, and authority figures are subject to confusion. But later in the day, you will speak up. Tonight, you're admired. Leo, a 4-star day. Steer clear of controversial subjects and issues related to politics, religion, and racial matters. These could become depressing as well as confusing. Tonight, explore and learn. Virgo, a 3-star day. If you have the choice, postpone important financial decisions about inheritances, shared property, taxes, and debt for another day. Tonight, check your finances. Libra, a 3-star day. Today has a few drawbacks when talking to partners, spouses, or close friends because misunderstandings might occur. Tonight, listen and cooperate. Scorpio, a 4-star day. You might want to address increased chaos and activity taking place at home so that you can restore order. Tonight, work to get better organized. Sagittarius, romance is challenging today, along with the arts and anything to do with your kids. You might feel increased restrictions or responsibilities. Tonight, enjoy socializing. Capricorn, a 3-star day. Family discussions with parents and older relatives might be discouraging today. It will all work out. Tonight, cocoon at home. Aquarius, a 4-star day. Don't fall into the paralysis of negativity by worrying about something today. Tonight, interesting conversations. And Pisces, a 4-star day. Financial matters might disappoint you today. Double check everything because you might not have the correct facts, or you could even be misled by someone. Tonight, check your belongings.
And for those of you who like the dining scene in Buffalo, Grayland closing at the end of month, new venture is set. Graylin, a downtown Buffalo restaurant known for its gin cocktails and scenic sidewalk patio, is closing at the end of the month. The restaurant is in a prime and important location. On the corner of Main and Genesee Streets, Graylin has anchored one of downtown's only lively food and drink hubs. In the summer, the patrons on the patios of Graylin and Fatty Beer Company often spill over onto the public Roosevelt Plaza next door. Graylin will close February 28th. However, its restaurant space at 537 Main Street shouldn't be vacant for long. A couple of employees from one of the restaurants that shares ownership with Graylin, that's Ballyhoo, Lucky Day, and Whiskey Bar, are planning to open a new business in the space, according to Graylin's social media post announcing the closure. Graylin's pocket of downtown Buffalo seemed to fare better than other parts of downtown, which has suffered since COVID from a lack of foot traffic, until September when Masuta Chow's closed its bar, restaurant, and arcade. When Graylin closes, it will leave another potentially temporary void in downtown's restaurant landscape. You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Thursday, February 19th on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Pat Lamont
and Ruth Nowotniak.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
beat you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Ruth Nowotniak.
and Pat Lamont. And let's see what's happening in the city and region. U.S. gives Buffalo $1.1 million to replace aging lead pipes. And this is by Matt Glynn, who is a news staff reporter. The city of Buffalo is receiving $1.1 million in federal funds to replace lead pipes, a step toward resolving an extensive and costly problem. The funds secured by U.S. Representative Tim Kennedy will go toward replacing lead pipes for 110 households. Mayor Sean Ryan said the work is expected to be completed this year. But that's just a fraction of what officials say is a problem that will cost more than $1 billion to solve. Our water system may be underground and out of sight, but it should never be out of mind, Kennedy said Wednesday. Clean, safe drinking water is foundational to public health, economic growth, and quality of life. The funds will support the city's Replacing Our Lead Lines initiative, which focuses on neighborhoods identified as disadvantaged communities. Those areas have some of the highest rates of childhood blood levels and aging infrastructure, according to Kennedy's office. Buffalo's high levels of lead exposure, there is no safe level of lead in blood. Even small amounts can cause serious lifelong damage with conditions like learning disabilities, hypertension, and immune system issues. It's especially dangerous for children. It's really concerning high levels of lead found in the East Side yards. While other elected officials applauded Kennedy for securing funds, they said a great deal more work and spending are needed to finish the job. There's a lot of need in our community, said Council President pro tempore Zanetta Everhart. And when we're talking about lead pipes and the infrastructure, we're talking about our children. We're talking about them dealing with it and going to school. Being infected by lead absolutely goes to how successful they are in school. Buffalo has an estimated 40 to 60,000 lead service lines in its system that need replacing. Ryan estimated the entire project will cost over $1 billion to complete. We're going to get it done, he said. At the same time, we're going to concentrate on trying to make houses safe and make sure we don't have chipping and peeling paint in houses because lead comes into kids' systems in several different ways. Ryan acknowledged there are challenges at the federal level to obtaining all the funds the city needs to replace its lead pipes over the next decade. In 2024, the Environmental Protection Agency established a mandate requiring public water systems across the country to replace all lead service lines by 2037. Ryan said the Biden administration allocated a lot of federal money to cities to replace pipes. The Trump administration has been less forthcoming with funding. Under the current president, he's telling the cities, you're on your own. So you know the EPA leaders from New York, but there's been no effort to actually make it so that the mandate coming out of D.C. is fully funded. Ryan said that if Democrats gain control of the House of Representatives in midterm elections, we will see money coming back to the cities. Kenny described the $1.1 million as just part for the city's work. We want more, we need more, and we're going to get more, he said. The city has already replaced about 2,000 water lines through the Replacing Our Lead Lines initiative. Efforts are underway to replace lead pipes across the country. The Erie County Water Authority announced in January it had received $1.6 million for that work. The funds were part of a $3.6 million package to improve water infrastructure throughout Western New York, secured by Senators Kristen Gillibrand and Chuck Schumer. And Governor Kathy Hochul, in her State of the State address, proposed $3.75 billion for clean water projects, which would provide $750 million annually for work including lead pipe replacement.
Canal Fest is relocating to Gatwick Park in July. This article is written by Stephen Watson, who's a news staff reporter. Is Canal Fest still Canal Fest if it takes place 3 miles from the canal? We'll find out this summer. Canal Fest of the Tonawandas will end decades of tradition this year when it leaves its longtime home in the heart of the Twin Cities. It's official. We are moving to Gatwick Park in North Tonawanda. More rides, more food, and the same great music, the nonprofit wrote on its website this week. Gatwick Riverside Park along the Niagara River is several miles north of downtown Tonawanda and North Tonawanda, where Canal Fest has long been held. Rick Mayer, a senior Canal Fest organizer, did not respond Wednesday to messages seeking comment on the reasons for the change. But organizers have struggled recently to find a financial model that still works for Canal Fest, an 8-day event that draws up to 150,000 people to the Twin Cities each summer. And Tonawanda officials have long raised concerns about the burden Canal Fest places on police and other municipal resources in that city. Tonawanda leaders said they expected to have further discussions with Canal Fest organizers about the 2026 event, and they were surprised to hear the relocation was happening. I thought there would be some more dialogue, Tonawanda Mayor William Strasburg II said in an interview. I don't know what went into their decision to make this move. Canal Fest has faced uncertainty over its future in recent years. The 4-decade-old festival was canceled in 2020 and 2021 because of the COVID-19 pandemic. It returned in 2022 without its signature parade and almost was canceled again in 2023 before the Hochul administration provided financial aid to keep it running. The Tonawanda Common Council only reluctantly approved the event in 2024. In 2025, Tonawanda city officials pushed for changes that included shrinking the event on their side of the canal from 8 to 6 days and shifting all amusement rides and games of chance to the North Tonawanda side. North Tonawanda Mayor Austin Tylek on Wednesday said it is challenging to host the event in his downtown, but the city has tried to support Canal Fest over the years. Gatwick Park offers ample space for rides, vendors, and other festival features, Tylek said, although he doesn't know how difficult it will be for organizers to adjust to the new venue. On our end, we can make it work, he said. It's a little more flexible at Gatwick for the city. The North Tonawanda Common Council agreed at its Tuesday meeting to let Canal Fest use Gatwick Park for this year's festival, scheduled to run from July 19 to 26. The city is in the final year of the 3-year deal with Canal Fest to provide police, fire, and other services in exchange for annual reimbursement that amounted to $37,000 for 2025. The move to Gatwick Park did make some North Tonawanda residents wonder about the event's longtime branding, Tylek said. We're all questioning whether they're going to keep the name Canal Fest, he said, and someone brought up, is it going to be called Riverfest? Canal Fest is a major fundraiser for local charities and nonprofits who set up food and beverage stands at the event, though participation has lagged in recent years. One of its missions, as stated on its website, is to boost the downtowns of the cities of Tonawanda and North Tonawanda. Strasburg, who campaigned for Tonawanda mayor last year, said he heard conflicting opinions about the value of Canal Fest. Some businesses say they get a boost from festival attendings, while others close for the week. It's a pretty polarizing thing, just because it is divided on the pros and cons of what the event brings, Strasburg said. Tonawanda officials say the festival puts a burden on police, who are often called to work overtime and to deal with unruly young people. And that's one reason the city pushed to move the rides and shorten Canal Fest to 6 days instead of 8. It wasn't a fair shake, that's the way I look at it, said First Ward Council member Jim Shisley, a retired city police officer.
Transit official asks state to institute $25 driver fee. Western New York drivers would pay an annual $25 fee to generate an estimated $125 million in state aid for transit authorities outside New York City, under a proposal from an official representing more than 100 public transportation systems. Miguel Velasquez, president of New York Public Transit Association, estimated that a $25 supplemental State Department of Motor Vehicles registration fee, which now exists for drivers in the New York City-based Metropolitan Transportation Authority's region, would address rising inflation, capital needs, and service improvements, according to his testimony before a joint legislative panel on February 3rd. Velasquez is Chief Executive Officer of the Rochester Genesee Regional Transportation Authority, which covers a territory that includes Genesee, Orleans, and Wyoming counties. His association represents transit systems that include the Niagara Frontier Transit Authority. Upstate transit systems are operating under structural budget deficits, he said to lawmakers who are conducting hearings on Governor Kathy Hochul's proposed $260 billion state budget. These are not temporary challenges or future concerns. These deficits will undermine access to jobs, education, health care, and child care. At a time when affordability is among the state's top priorities, state funding has not kept pace with the rising needs of public transit authorities, he testified. He said aging bus fleets, obsolete facilities, and workforce pressures all threaten the reliability of transit systems. Velasquez said downtown transit systems receive revenue from 18 services. Upstate transit systems have just 4. Downstate funding mechanisms were proven effective, he said. Why not extend some of those upstate? Upstate riders and communities are no less deserving of safe, reliable, and financially sustainable transport service. Velasquez said the state should consider using a small portion of state taxes on corporations to fund upstate transit service. Senator Jeremy Cooney of Rochester asked what increased money would accomplish for the agencies. Velasquez said it was twofold, that the money would ensure transit systems address deficits, sustain services, and have strong financial footing, and to meet customers' increasing demands to expand service and frequency of transit options. I just want to underscore that the frequency is a continued issue in upstate New York. So whether you're in Erie County or Onondaga County, we want to make sure that all of our transit will have the frequency, which will include increased ridership. Velasquez asked lawmakers to increase the proposed $223.5 million non-MTA capital funding in Hochul's budget by $100 million and restore $26 million in dedicated money to the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority. Erie County Public Works Commissioner William Gary, president of New York State County Highway Superintendents, who testified before the Joint Committee alongside Towns of Clarence Superintendent of Highways, Jamie Dusting, president of New York State Association of Town Superintendents of Highways, backed the $25 fee. Senator Patrick Gallivan, who serves on the committee, said he is against the proposal. I oppose any new fees of taxes and continue to believe that state support for upstate transit should be equitable with that provided for downstate. While the issue was open for the governor's review, a person with knowledge of the situation said given the state's affordability issues, it was unlikely that Hochul would embrace a new fee on drivers.
Study says Buffalo needs a 400-room hotel to compete. This is written by Samantha Crispin and Matt Glynn, who are news business reporters. Visit Buffalo has been saying it for years. Now a survey at Commission says it too. Downtown Buffalo needs more hotel beds, a lot of them. Erie County's Tourism Board released a tourism market study Wednesday that said the city needs a new upscale hotel near the convention center with at least 400 rooms, which can act as a headquarters for large events and conventions. The study, conducted by hospitality consulting firm HVS, comes as the Buffalo Grand Hotel is shut down after a major fire and mired in eminent domain dealings, and the Hyatt Regency Buffalo battles a continuous unionization drive in addition to criticism about its aging room and amenities. Absent a larger hotel, visiting groups tend to spread across smaller hotels, making large blocks of rooms hard to secure. That shortage is cited as a reason Buffalo has turned down or lost out on hundreds of events that could have led to significant spending by the people attending. It's absolutely true. We need more hotel rooms in downtown Buffalo, Mayor Sean Ryan said at a news conference. Efforts to bring the state Democratic Convention to Buffalo were recently stymied by the lack of beds, Ryan said. The answer was not enough rooms. I've met with other nationwide organizers who want to come to Buffalo, and the first thing they ask, how many rooms do you have? While Buffalo will host the NCAA men's basketball tournament for 2 days next month, the city's lack of hotel stock costed higher bracketed games, Ryan said. It's only going to happen if we have more rooms for people to stay in. When people come to tournaments or to the convention center, they want to walk. They don't want to have to drive from a hotel outside the city, Ryan said. So we need to get those 2 hotels downtown back online. And at the same time, we want to encourage the private sector to start looking at buildable space to put some more rooms downtown. But convincing a developer to build a new hotel won't be easy. The city's convention center is too small to host big gatherings, and the convention business has sagged nationwide since the pandemic. Those factors made it harder to justify spending tens of millions of dollars on a new hotel at today's higher interest rates. The owner of the Embassy Suites Hotel in the Avant building downtown last year converted about a quarter of its hotel rooms, 59 in all, to apartments that it expected to rent for more than $2,000 a month and up to $3,800 for its priciest unit. The city has given the beleaguered Buffalo Grand Hotel 90 days to come up with financing before it considers the hotel abandoned. I believe in trust but verify. So we're doing 30-day check-ins, and at the end of that 90 days, if there's no financing, then we'll have to go forward with the court action to declare that property abandoned and to seize ownership. In the meantime, adding and renovating rooms would alleviate the current squeeze on hoteliers, he said, just as at the Statler Hotel. We're all rooting for Doug Jamal to finish the Statler because that'll come with a couple hundred rooms too, Ryan said. Jamal, however, has said the Statler project remains stalled because the state has not agreed to pay the $30 million in subsidies he contends are essential for work to begin. Even if the Buffalo Grand was open right now, it would not meet standards for the NCAA's teams coming in, tourism professionals said.
I'm sorry, we're a little bit late. I got carried away. We'll now go to, the time is 18 minutes after the hour, and we will go to sports. Mike Harrington's commentary on the Sabres. It's hurry up and wait as the Sabres look to resume push. When the Sabres took to the ice Wednesday morning at Lacombe Harbor Center to open their post-Olympic break practice schedule, we were still a week away from resuming the season we've waited over a decade to see. The hurry up and wait mode is tough to take. The standings have been frozen since late on the night of February 5th, and the waiting will total 20 days before they get any more movement. The Sabres will enter next Wednesday's night game in New Jersey as the number 1 wild card in the Eastern Conference, 5 points inside the playoff cut line and 2 behind Montreal and Detroit for the battle to get as high as second in the Atlantic Division. With 25 games left, it's heady stuff for sure. Definitely the biggest games of my career, said center Josh Norris, one of many Sabres aiming for their first trip to the Stanley Cup playoffs. I haven't been in this position before, to be in a playoff spot and kind of control your own destiny. So yeah, I could be one for sure to say that I'm super excited for that. There were plenty of good feelings around to warm and chilly rink. Norris and Josh June were on the ice in non-contact sweaters, but looked fine, sounded optimistic, and seemed ready to shed the gold togs as soon as Thursday's workout. Dunn was smiling ear to ear when asked about the USA-Canada Olympic women's hockey gold medal game set for Thursday. What's happening tomorrow, deadpan Dunn, whose sister Joy plays for Team USA and whose girlfriend Ella Shelton plays for Canada. Dunn regaled the media with a funny vignette of his time in Italy earlier in the tournament, including the Americans' 5-0 win over Canada. As the tale went, he promised his parents and his girlfriend's family he would only stand up if one of his two rooting interests scored, and he would otherwise sit mostly quiet and watching. Coach Lindy Ruff said he's really honed in on Joy Dunn's skill and goal scoring in the tournament, and Ruff had a good laugh when it was suggested his player is stuck towing a dangerous line. It is a little bit in ways, I guess, cracked Ruff, failing to suppress his laughter. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and Zach Benson both remained off the ice with the team, but Ruff was similarly upbeat. Luukkonen, who was skating on his own, should be back in a few more days, and Benson was getting another evaluation in the upper body injury he suffered when he crashed into the boards in Florida on February 2nd.
Question answered. Bills Walker aims to change body after solid rookie year. This is a news staff article by Lance Lysowski. After cleaning out his locker last month, Buffalo Bills defensive tackle Deon Walker admitted that he wasn't sure where he'd train this offseason. Arrangements had not yet been made because Walker planned for the Bills to play into February. The finality of a heartbreaking season-ending loss forced him to reflect sooner than expected and look ahead to the next pivotal chapter in his young career. The back injury that limited his impact and production at the University of Kentucky in 2024 also prevented him from training properly last offseason. He couldn't trim fat and gain muscle the way he and the NFL teams would have liked. A proper workout regime did not begin for Walker until he joined the Bills as a fourth-round draft pick in April. Health is no longer an issue for Walker. After his practice reps were monitored last spring, Walker played 47% of the Bills' defensive snaps in the regular season. He started 18 games, including both playoff matchups, and his performance earned him a spot in the Pro Football Writers Association's all-rookie team. The breakthrough strengthened a Bills defense that was decimated by injuries, including one to fellow defensive tackle Ed Oliver, and provided Buffalo with another building block on the side of the ball that has not performed well enough in the playoffs. The next stop for Bills general manager and president of football operations Brandon Beane is to continue to add players like Walker who have game-wrecking potential. Year 2 will bring different challenges. Opponents will continue to send double-team blocks at Walker, who admittedly struggled too often in that area in 2025, and he must acclimate to the 3-4 scheme Bills defensive coordinator Jim Leonhard will implement this spring. Walker and the rest of Buffalo's linemen must learn different techniques as part of that transition. The questions surrounding Walker's ability, including those he asked himself, were answered, however. He proved that he still possesses the talent and potential that once had scouts label him as a future first-round draft choice. It was not a perfect debut for Walker. He wasn't always reliable against the run. His technique on double-team blocks need work, and he needs to be better disciplined with his pad level. His combination of size, strength, and athleticism produced numerous impressive plays. Among rookie defensive tackles who played at least 20% of their team's snaps, Walker ranked second in run-stopping tackles, 25, trailing only the Cleveland Browns' Mason Graham, who got drafted 5th overall. According to Pro Football Focus, Walker was second in run stop percentage. His pass rush grade ranked first, and no one in the group batted down as many passes as Walker's 4. Walker was arguably the Bills' second-best defensive lineman behind Greg Rousseau, ranking second on a team that run stops. The Bills were not sure how often they'd be able to play Walker as a rookie because of the back injury. Okay.
Schifrin captures third gold in Alpine. Michaela Schifrin stood atop the Olympic podium looking almost in disbelief at the gold medal around her neck. American skiing star hasn't simply won a slalom race to end her 8-year medal drought at the Winter Games and underline her status as surely the greatest alpine skier of all time. She'd also won a battle with herself. "It's like being born again," she said before pausing. Racing in what she described as a spiritual state, Schifrin put in 2 dominant runs in gorgeous conditions amid the jagged peaks of the Dolomites to win by a massive 1.50 seconds, making her the first American skier to win 3 Alpine gold medals. Through it all, Schifrin said she never stopped thinking about her father, Jeff, who died at the age of 65 in an accident at the family home in Colorado in February 2020. "This was a moment I have dreamed about. I've also been very scared of this moment. Everything in life that you do after you leave someone you love is like a new experience. And I still have so many moments where I resist this. I don't want to be in life without my dad. And maybe today was the first time that I could actually express this reality." For 12 years, she failed to meet the huge expectations at the 2022 Olympics, become the most successful World Cup skier of all time with a record 108 victories, and overcome 2 of the biggest crashes of her career and an ensuing battle with post-traumatic stress disorder. She delivered again in her favorite event. Her skiing career, in a sense, has come full circle. And the images of Lindsey Vonn down on the snow, screaming in pain, and then being airlifted off the course by helicopter after her crash at the Olympics were a stark reminder of the dangers of downhill. So is this. Her skis didn't come off. Vonn's boots remained locked in her skis even after her pinwheeling fall at the Milan Cortina Games, pointing awkwardly in different directions as she slid to a stop in obvious agony. It is impossible to know whether Vonn would have suffered a less serious injury. Her complex tibia fracture has already required multiple surgeries. Had her skis been released, but the devastating injury has put a spotlight on the importance of bindings, which hold boots to the skis and remain some of the oldest technology in the sport. Officials told the Associated Press that a binding system designed to automatically release skis when a racer like Vonn loses control is in the drawing board phase after years of stalled discussions. And just a short, for your information, the Seattle Seahawks are going up for sale in accordance with the wishes of the late team owner Paul Allen. Allen's estate announced Wednesday that it has begun the process of selling the team, which is coming off its 2nd Super Bowl victory in franchise history. The NFL did not immediately respond to a request for comment from the Associated Press, nor did Allen's estate have anything further to add beyond the brief statement. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and we will now go to see what kind of advice Eric is providing today. Dear Eric, There's a gal in my social circle who makes a habit of attending birthday parties, and in addition to the piece or two of birthday cake she consumes at the party, wraps pieces of cake to take home from her family. Sometimes she even does without asking permission. On my 37th birthday, I had a gathering of about 12 of the gals over. I baked my own cake, simple 2-layer round one, that had to be divided carefully to ensure that every attendee got a slice. After everyone who wanted one had a slice, I was delighted to see that there were 3 slivers on the plate. But at the end of the party, they were gone. The cake hoarder had struck again. I was livid. Time went by, and at my 40th birthday party, as I was in the process of cutting the cake, she came up to me with a plate in her hand and asked if she could have a few extra slices to take home to her family. I said no.
Sorry.
If there were a few slices left over, I would be taking them home to enjoy, as it was my birthday cake. She looked shocked, angry, and hurt. I'm just curious. Is it poor manners to wrap up someone else's birthday cake, either without permission or by putting them on the spot, and taking home 3 times as much cake as anyone else on the party? Feeling not so sweet. Okay. Her response. Dear Eric, short and sweet. She should have asked, and she shouldn't have been huffy about getting told no. The manners books don't really address this 3-slice conundrum because it seems specific to your friend. Personally, if I've got a limited number of slices, I'm not going to invite this person to my party. There's no harm in asking for what you want, but it's also important not to get carried away. Perhaps chalk it up to her misreading the room or being overeager. But at the end of the day, you don't have any obligation to provide a sweet treat for her husband and her kids at home. Dear Eric, I was invited to join a group of ladies last year for a monthly game night. We all take turns hosting. I'm wondering how to gracefully quit the group. They are really nice people, and we all get along, but the conversation is light, and we hardly ever veer into world affairs. I sense a political divide. Anyway, I would simply rather spend the evening home with my husband watching a movie or reading. How do I let the ladies know without offending them? Signed, Homebody. Dear Homebody, everything has its season, and group traditions don't have to last forever. They don't even have to last in multiple years. The most graceful way to bow out of a game night is to tell them you appreciate the company and you're grateful you have been invited, but you'd like to spend more time with your husband. This is the truth, and it's also hard to fault you for it. There's no need to get into the issues with light conversation, as that veers into critique. It's possible the group has had other members come and go too. It happens, and it's very likely that they all have other demands on their time. They'll understand. Dear Eric, this is in reference to the letter from Movin' and Groovin', who took social dance classes and wanted to learn more technique from the instructor instead of basic steps that were accessible at all levels. I've been dancing ballet, ballroom, country western, folk, and clogging since I was 6, so I do have a lifetime of experience. If you're taking group dance classes, the instructor will really only have time to concentrate on everyone in the class learning the steps being taught in that class. If it's a more advanced class, the instructor will most likely add in some technique. Traditionally, technique is taught in private lessons where the instructor can work on the student's specific needs. Almost all dance students take classes from various instructors who all have different strengths. This enables the dance student to benefit from a wide variety of training and build a stronger dance repertoire. This is not looked at as being unfaithful to your current instructor. In fact, most will encourage that you take from others as they do such themselves. You never stop learning. Hope this helps. Keep on dancing in the OC. Dear Dancing, it does help. Thanks for this perspective. A good instructor is going to want you to improve and will give you the tools to do so. Sometimes those tools are referrals to other instructors who can take your skills to the next level.
And our First Life feature, UN to meet on Gaza ahead of Board of Peace gathering. The UN Security Council is set to hold a high-level meeting Wednesday on the Gaza ceasefire deal and Israel's efforts to expand control in the West Bank before world leaders head to Washington to discuss the future of the Palestinian territories at the first gathering of President Trump's Board of Peace. The UN session in New York was originally scheduled for Thursday, but was moved up after Trump announced the board's meeting for that same date, and it became clear that it would complicate travel plans for diplomats planning to attend both. It is a sign of the potential for overlapping and conflicting agendas between the United Nations' most powerful body and Trump's new initiative, whose broader ambitions to broker global conflicts have raised concerns in some countries that it may attempt to rival the UN Security Council. Asked what he hopes to see from the back-to-back meetings this week, Palestinian UN Ambassador Riyad Mansour told reporters, "We expect from the international community to stop Israel and end their illegal effort against annexation, whether in Washington or in New York." The foreign ministers of the United Kingdom, Israel, Jordan, Egypt, and Indonesia, among others, are expected to attend the monthly Mid-East meeting of the 15-member council after many Arab and Islamic countries requested last week that it discuss Gaza and Israel's contentious West Bank settlement project before some of them head to Washington. The board, to be chaired by Trump, was originally envisioned as a small group of world leaders overseeing his 20-point plan for Gaza's future. But the Republican president's ambitious new vision for the board to be a mediator of worldwide conflicts has led to skepticism from major allies. While more than 20 countries have so far accepted an invitation to join the board, close U.S. partners, including France, Germany, and others, have opted not to join yet and renewed support for the UN, which also is in the throes of major reforms and funding cuts. Mike Waltz, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, dismissed concerns about the composition of the Board of Peace, telling conservative radio host Hugh Hewitt in an interview Monday that the most relevant countries, including Qatar and Egypt, which are in touch with Hamas's leadership, have accepted the invitation. All of those countries are on the Board of Peace, singing the same tune as the United States, he said. The Security Council will be meeting a day after nearly all of its 15 members, minus the United States, and dozens of other diplomats joined Palestinian Ambassador Mansour as he read a statement on behalf of 80 countries and several organizations condemning Israel's latest actions at the West Bank, demanding an immediate reversal and underlining strong oppositions to any form of annexation. Israel, whose UN mission did not immediately respond to requests for comment on Wednesday's meeting, is launching a contentious land regulation process that will deepen its control in the occupied West Bank. Israeli Energy Minister Eli Cohen said it amounts to, quote, de facto sovereignty that will block the establishment of a Palestinian state. Outraged Palestinians, Arab countries, and human rights groups have called the moves an illegal annexation of the territory, home to roughly 3.4 million Palestinians who seek it for a future state. The UN meeting also is expected to delve into the U.S.-brokered ceasefire deal that took effect October 10th after more than 2 years of war between Israel and Hamas. The UK, which currently holds the presidency of the Council, said the meeting will include briefings by UN political chief Rosemary DiCarlo and by Israeli and Palestinian civil society representatives for the first time since the October 7 attacks. Aspects of the ceasefire deal have moved forward, including Hamas releasing all the hostages it was holding and increased amounts of humanitarian aid getting into Gaza, though the UN says the level is insufficient. A new technocratic committee has been appointed to administer Gaza's daily affairs. But the most challenging steps lie ahead, including the deployment of an international security force disarming Hamas and rebuilding Gaza. Trump said this week that the Board of Peace members have pledged $5 billion toward Gaza reconstruction and will commit thousands of personnel to international stabilization and police forces for the territory. He didn't provide details. Indonesian military says up to 8,000 of its troops are expected to be ready by the end of June for a potential deployment to Gaza as part of a humanitarian and peace mission.
Suit claims Trump policies are erasing history at parks. Conservation and historical organizations sued the Trump administration on Tuesday over National Park Service policies that the groups say erase history and science from America's national parks. A lawsuit filed in Boston says orders by President Trump and Interior Secretary Doug Burgum have forced Park Service staff to remove or censor exhibits that share factually accurate and relevant U.S. history and scientific knowledge, including slavery and climate change. Separately, LGBTQ+ rights advocates and historic preservationists sued the Park Service Tuesday for removing a rainbow pride flag from the Stonewall National Monument, the New York site that commemorates a foundational moment in the modern LGBTQ+ rights movement. The changes at exhibits came in response to a Trump executive order restoring truth and sanity to American history at the nation's museums, parks, and landmarks. It directed the Interior Department to ensure those sites do not display elements that inappropriately disparage Americans past or living. Burgum later directed removal of improper partisan ideology from museums, monuments, landmarks, and other public exhibits under federal control. The groups behind the lawsuit said that a federal campaign to review interpretive materials has escalated in recent weeks, leading to the removal of numerous exhibits that discuss the history of slavery and enslaved people, civil rights, treatment of indigenous peoples, climate science, and other core elements of the American experience. The suit was filed by a coalition that includes the National Parks Conservation Association, American Association for State and Local History, Association of National Park Rangers, and Union of Concerned Scientists. It comes as a federal judge on Monday ordered that an exhibit about 9 people enslaved by George Washington must be restored at his former home in Philadelphia. The Park Service removed explanatory panels last month from Independence National Historical Park, the site where George and Martha Washington lived with 9 of their slaves in the 1790s, when Philadelphia was briefly the nation's capital. The George ordered the exhibits restored on President's Day, the federal holiday honoring Washington's legacy. Besides the Philadelphia case, the Park Service has flagged for removal interpretive materials describing key moments in the civil rights movement. The group said, for example, at the Selma to Montgomery National Historic Trail in Alabama, officials have flagged about 80 items for removal. The permanent exhibit at Brown versus Board of Education National Historic Park in Kansas has been flagged because it mentions equity, the lawsuit says. Signage has disappeared from Grand Canyon National Park, said letters pushed Native American tribes off their land for the park to be established and exploited the landscape for mining and grazing. At Glacier National Park in Montana, Park Service officials ordered removal of materials describing the effect of climate change on the park and its role in driving the disappearance of glaciers, the suit said. Censoring science and erasing America's history at national parks are direct threats to everything these amazing places and our country stand for, said Alan Spears, Senior Director of Cultural Resources at the Parks Conservation Association. National parks serve as living classrooms for our country, where science and history come to life for visitors. As Americans, we deserve national parks that tell stories of our country's triumphs and heartbreaks alike. We can handle the truth. The Interior Department said Tuesday it has appealed the court's ruling in the Philadelphia case, updated interpretive materials providing a fuller account of the history of slavery at Independence Hall would have been installed in the coming days in the absence of a court order, an Interior spokesperson said in an email. The new lawsuit is premature and based on inaccurate and mischaracterized information, White House spokeswoman Taylor Rogers said Tuesday. The Department of the Interior is engaged in an ongoing review of our nation's American history exhibits in accordance with the President's executive order, but actions are not yet finalized, she said. U.S. District Court Judge Cynthia Ruffey ruled Monday that all materials from a Philadelphia exhibit must be restored in their original condition while a lawsuit challenging the removal's legality plays out. She prohibited Trump officials from installing replacements that explain the history differently. Ruffey, an appointee of Republican President George Bush, began her written order with a quote from George Orwell's dystopian novel 1984 and compared the Trump administration to the book's totalitarian regime called the Ministry of Truth, which revised historical records to align with its own narrative. The lawsuit over the Stonewall flag calls its removal the latest example of a long line of efforts by the Trump administration to target the LGBTQ community for discrimination and opprobrium. The pride flag was installed in 2022, becoming the first such banner to fly permanently on federal land. After the banner vanished this month, the Park Service cited a January 21 memo that largely limits the agency to displaying interior and POW MIA flags, although exemptions include providing historical context. The lawsuit argues the rainbow flag provided such context and says the Park Service continues to make exceptions for other banners, including Confederate ones that help explain certain sites' history. New York politicians and activists raised their own pride flag at the Stonewall Monument on Thursday. The Interior Department on Tuesday repeated past criticisms of New York City and its Democratic office holders who aren't party to the suit. Jeff Mao, who retired in 2022 as superintendent at Glacier, said the Park Service has always taken great pride in its scholarly research, its focus on telling the truth and being very straightforward about that. He called Trump's order a disservice to the public, and it makes it very hard for those that are trying to do their jobs and being storytellers and speaking the truth. You cannot tell the story of America without recognizing both the beauty and the tragedy of our history, said Sky Perryman, president and CEO of Democracy Forward, a nonprofit legal organization that filed the lawsuit on behalf of advocacy groups.
And from our Alan Pergamon article, WIVB TV Channel 4 and WNLO TV President, Vice President, and General Manager Joe Abuzad is leaving the CBS affiliate owned by Nexstar immediately to take the same job at another CBS affiliate owned by the company, WPRI-TV in Providence, Rhode Island. Abuzad will continue to run Channel 4 remotely from Providence until his successor is named. It is a lateral move for Abuzad. Providence, New Bedford is the number 52 market, 2 spots ahead of Buffalo. However, he considers Providence his hometown after living there for many years. Pat?
And we'll conclude with my view. Even heroes need to cry sometimes, and this is by English teacher Lisa Wiley Maslow, who felt that Josh Allen set a good example by showing his emotions. Even superheroes cry sometimes, we learned after the Bills lost to Denver. Josh Allen's eyes glistened as he approached the post-game podium. "I feel like I let my teammates down," he said. His number 17 shoulders shook under his Bills pom-pom hat. This vulnerable moment was more crushing to this generation than the wide world of sports, agony of defeat, ski jumping crash. We saw the MVP's tears, and we may learn more from how he carried himself after this heartbreaking loss than from the thrill of victory. Allen taught a vast herd of number 17s who collectively wiped their eyes that we don't need to wait until June for Men's Health Month or Movember to raise awareness that men can and should show emotions and let them out. There is strength, not weakness, in crying. We've come a long way since Tom Hanks screamed to the right fielder, "There is no crying in baseball." Allen displayed that strength isn't measured by being tight-lipped. Strength isn't found by being stoic and silent. It isn't achieved by placing blame on others. There is tremendous power in letting go and letting it out. It helps people find peace and healing. Allen showed us there isn't an age limit on crying. It isn't reserved for Little League losses, JV hockey, or youth soccer. He removed the stigma that many men still carry over crying in public, reminding us that passion is what matters. My father revealed that lesson to me later in life when he allowed his sky blue eyes to shed tears. Allen made it clear it's important to be accountable in heroic proportions. And Dion Dawkins cried too, proclaiming, "He didn't let us down." Josh didn't let any of us down, not even my 8-year-old nephew who got his number 17 jersey for Christmas, like his cousins, in time for the last regular season games and playoffs. Josh's reactions revealed true humility and taught him about this fan-based resilience, even though he won't see him in shotgun or propelled by a Buffalo bobsled in this year's Super Bowl. In my own microcosm, my community college classroom, I find the most poignant moments of learning happen when we embrace the very emotions that make us human. A student's profound loss was palpable when she read about wearing her late mother's shoes to prom and getting on the dance floor in her honor to Whitney Houston's "I Wanna Dance with Somebody," and we collectively cried at 8 a.m. that morning.
Another student, an Army veteran, wrote his persuasive essay about the importance of checking on veterans, especially during the holidays. His statistic of 17 veterans committing suicide every day moved the classroom to tears. And sometimes we cry in joy over bravery, like a student from Burma who surprised us by playing his ukulele to present his favorite song, or a former Marine who recited his first sonnet. Tears make us vulnerable. Tears forge community even more than singing Mr. Brightside. As Bills fans, we know all too well there's a time to mourn and a time to dance. Once again, we learned it wasn't our year to dance. Alan noted this loss as going to stick with me for a long time, and that's okay. It will stick with all of us for a long time, not for the calls or fumbles, but because superheroes are mortal, and they cry too.
And just two little shorts. Thanks for
You're
pitching in there, friend.
You're welcome.
Okay. Businesses are spending more on expensive capital goods. New orders for key U.S. manufactured capital goods increased more than expected in December, and shipments of these products surged, cementing economists' expectations that business spending on equipment remains solid in the fourth quarter. Non-defense capital goods orders, excluding aircraft, a closely watched proxy for business spending, rose 0.6%. after an upwardly revised 0.8% increase in November, the Commerce Department Census Bureau said on Wednesday. Business spending on equipment is being boosted by an artificial intelligence investment boom, which has fueled rapid growth in data centers. But tariffs on imports have stifled manufacturing that is not tied to AI. Economists expect a broad manufacturing sector recovery this year as some of the uncertainty from tariffs fades and cuts take effect. And Walmart treads with caution. Investors have been upbeat about Walmart for months, but Wall Street expects the largest U.S. retailer to take a measured approach to its annual forecast when it reports results on Thursday, as new CEO John Furner steers the company through a fragile consumer landscape. The company's market value recently crossed $1 trillion, making it the first retailer to reach that milestone. Its 24% gain over last year far outpaces packaged good food companies that have struggled as consumers retrench. This quarter will be the first time investors hear from Furner, who took over as CEO at the start of the month. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, February 19th. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Ruth Novotniak
and Pat Lamont, and thank you for listening and have a pleasant weekend.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio Reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. listeners who are flying